Hello, my name is Maurice Roemer. On March 24th and 25th, the Nuclear Security Summit will be held at the World Forum Convention Center in my home city, The Hague. I am a resident of The Hague. I'm very worried about the future of the Earth because of the danger of nuclear weapons. That's why I would like to give my opinion about the Nuclear Security Summit. I wanted to know exactly what the Nuclear Security Summit is, so that's why I did some research on the internet. I learned that the world leaders attending the Nuclear Security Summit will primarily focus on preventing terrorists from acquiring nuclear materials, uranium and plutonium. But the world leaders at the Nuclear Security Summit won't talk about nuclear disarmament at all. It's a very big disappointment for me that the world leaders won't talk about nuclear disarmament, although they do talk about the reduction of nuclear materials. But that's not good enough for me. I think that nuclear disarmament should be the #1 priority on the international agenda. With nuclear disarmament, I mean the elimination of all nuclear weapons on the Earth. 58 world leaders will come together in The Hague, and they won't talk about nuclear disarmament at all. All they do is talking about the prevention of nuclear terrorism. Well, this is very ironic. I think that every state that possesses nuclear weapons is a terrorist to the Earth. Every state that possesses weapons of mass destruction is a huge threat to all life on the Earth. According to scientists, our planet was created 4.5 billion years ago. How dare you to create dangerous weapons on such a beautiful old planet? The Earth is my home. When you watch the promotion videos of the Nuclear Security Summit, they talk about the benefits of nuclear materials. 1. It heals the sick. 2. It lights our homes. And 3. It's important for economic and technological development. Well, I agree that healing sick people is very important. But is healing sick people more important than the safety of all life on planet Earth? There must be other alternative ways to treat diseases. As long as nuclear materials exist, our planet will be in great danger. What if a nuclear power plant accidentally releases radioactive material caused by a natural disaster? For example, a tsunami or a comet collision? Just think about the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster that was caused by a tsunami and earthquake in March 2011. A meltdown of its reactors caused radiation leaks. And what would have happened if the Chelyabinsk meteor from February 2013 had crashed into a nuclear power station in Russia? Well, that's something to think about. Radioactivity is very harmful for human beings, animals, plants, and trees. I'm also very worried about a future war between the West and the East, especially a war between the United States and Russia. Americans and Russians always demonize each other in the media. These two states possess the most nuclear weapons in the world. Together they possess about 90% of the nuclear weapons in the world. Their stockpile could destroy the whole planet. I also wonder, is it possible that the United States invaded Afghanistan in 2001 and Iraq in 2004 to get closer to Russia and China? The United States already colonized Israel-Palestine. Many people think that the United States will also invade Iran and Syria someday. All 5 countries are located right next to each other, from left to right. 1. Israel-Palestine. 2. Syria. 3. Iraq. 4. Iran. And 5. Afghanistan. Is it just a coincidence that these 5 countries are located right next to each other, like a wall structure in front of Russia? This looks like a war strategy to me. Is it possible that the United States use the war on Al-Qaeda terrorism only as an excuse to invade countries in the Middle East? Because what they really want is getting closer to Russia and China? Well, that's something to think about too. We are the inhabitants of the earth. We have to learn to look at the bigger picture. What's really going on behind the political scenes of nuclear weapon states? Well, I'd like to know. I do believe that President Obama of the United States has good intentions, because it was his idea to create the first nuclear security summit in Washington 2010. At the presidential press conference, April 13th in 2010, Obama talked about global security. At the opening of the second Nuclear Security Summit in Seoul 2012, Obama said, "The Nuclear Security Summit in Washington 2010 and in Seoul 2012 are part of a global architecture designed to reduce the dangers of nuclear weapons and nuclear terrorism, but also to more safely and effectively pursue peaceful uses of nuclear energy. I think that Obama said some positive things, but I don't agree with his idea of a global security. I think there's a big difference between global security and global safety. I support global safety. With global safety, I mean a world that's free from nuclear weapons and nuclear materials. A world where people live in harmony with all other life forms on the earth. I don't support global security because global security means that people will be watched 24/7 by big brother machines like cameras in the streets, drones in the sky, telephone and the internet. Just think about the spying program of the National Security Agency of the United States. In that way, people will lose their right to privacy. Global security will create a global police state. Is global security enough for the safety of our planet? Not at all. Global security only creates more control, but the nuclear weapons are still there, so we are not safer. Should we also eliminate stockpiles of nuclear materials that have not yet been used for the creation of chemical or biological weapons? Well, I think there's always the risk of theft. There's a great danger that terrorist groups will acquire these materials to build a nuclear weapon. There's also a danger that states will feel tempted to use their own nuclear materials for the creation of weapons of mass destruction. I think that human beings cannot resist temptations. Someday, they will feel tempted to create new nuclear weapons and use them against the Earth. It happened before. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, August 1945. And it could happen again. Should we also eliminate peaceful uses of nuclear materials? Well, like I said before, I think that electricity and healing sick people are wonderful things. But as long as people keep using nuclear energy, there will always be a great danger that the reactors of nuclear power plants have a meltdown, causing radiation leaks, which are very harmful for the environment. That's why I think we should eliminate all stockpiles of nuclear materials and shut down all nuclear power plants. On September 26, 2013, There was a high-level meeting on nuclear disarmament during the 68th session of the United Nations General Assembly. You can read the statements of member states on the website of the United Nations, including the statements of the 5 recognized nuclear weapon states: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China. There are also statements of India and Pakistan, but on the United Nations website I could not find any statements of North Korea and Israel. Although Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, gave a speech on the last day of the 68th session of the General Assembly. All these states that I mentioned probably possess nuclear weapons. Frans Timmermans, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, delivered a statement too, although Holland is not a nuclear weapon state. One of the most positive statements came from Hassan Rouhani, the president of Iran. He proposed the designation of September 26th every year as an international day to renew their resolve to completely eliminate nuclear weapons. He also proposed a high-level international conference on nuclear disarmament in 5 years to review progress. Rouhani's statement sounds very positive to me, and I do believe that Iran is not a nuclear threat to the world. But during the 68th session of the General Assembly, Netanyahu called Rouhani a wolf in sheep's clothing. He only talked about Iran's nuclear program and asked to keep up the sanctions on Iran. He never talked about Israel's own nuclear program. Obviously, the relationship between Israel and Iran is very bad. I think that Netanyahu's speech was very warlike and not peaceful at all. I think he wants the United States to invade Iran. It's also very ironic because Israel is the only country in the Middle East that never signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The Non-Proliferation Treaty was opened for signature in 1968 and entered into force in 1970. A total of 190 states have joined the treaty, although North Korea left the treaty in 2003. 4 member states of the United Nations have never joined the treaty: Israel, India, Pakistan, and South Sudan. Of course, I am disappointed in these 4 member states. They are cowards, and Israel should stop stop judging and demonizing Iran, because Israel is not any better. I understand that the Jewish people want to defend themselves because they suffered a lot in the past centuries. I condemn anti-Semitism and all racism. I do believe that the Holocaust really happened, just like the Atlantic slave trade really happened. Anyone who denies the Holocaust is a fool. You need to educate yourself. There's plenty of documentation about this topic. The development of nuclear weapons could never be justified. I praise Israel for protecting gay rights, the only country in the Middle East. But I condemn Israel for developing nuclear weapons and not signing the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Researchers don't know for sure if Israel possesses nuclear weapons, but generally people believe it's true. I believe it's true because Israel never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. If it's true that Israel possesses nuclear weapons, then this might be the result of Zionism. At the 2014 Nuclear Security Summit, the world leaders will talk about the prevention of nuclear terrorism. Well, I believe that Iran is not the terrorist. Don't get me wrong. I don't believe that Iran is a saint, because I condemn the way Iran treats gay people. Gay people need protection in Iran. But we have to be honest. Iran is not a nuclear threat. 10 years ago, George W. Bush, President of the United States, and Tony Blair, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, claimed that Iraq was a terrorist too. But that turned out to be a lie. Iraq never possessed any nuclear weapons. The United Nations disapproved an invasion due to lack of evidence, but Bush and Blair totally ignored that. They still went into war with Iraq. Thousands of people in Iraq lost their lives. In this world, there are 9 nuclear weapon states: the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, China, India, Pakistan, North Korea, and probably Israel too. All 9 states possess nuclear weapons, and that's why these 9 states are a great danger to the earth. These 9 states are the real terrorists to planet Earth. I know that the member states of the United Nations try to reduce their nuclear weapons and materials, but this reduction is going way too slow. The Non-Proliferation Treaty has existed since 1968 and now it is 2014. Why does it have to take decades to reduce your nuclear arsenal? How many decades do you need to reduce your nuclear weapons? During the 68th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, the nuclear weapon states delivered statements with a lot of beautiful words and promises, but not enough action. Russia and the United States possess 90% of the nuclear weapons in the world. Their stockpile could destroy the whole planet. An important question is, why do the nuclear weapon states continue to stick to their nuclear arsenal? I think that planet Earth is in great danger. A nuclear war between the West and the East is a real danger. It's all about money and power. The evil forces have grown out of control. How are we going to tame them? I am convinced that nuclear disarmament is the only way to make this world a safer place, because you cannot trust states that possess nuclear weapons. We should eliminate all nuclear weapons, but we should also eliminate all stockpiles of nuclear materials, uranium, plutonium, and thorium, because of the risk of theft. And we should stop using nuclear energy, because nuclear power plants are very dangerous because of radiation leaks. We have to look for different sources of energy. For example, solar energy, wind energy, or water energy might be interesting. But I think we should learn to use our spiritual energy in the first place. I believe that spiritual energy is the most powerful energy of all. It creates endless possibilities. Well, that's my advice for the world leaders attending the 2014 Nuclear Security Summit.
58 world leaders will come together on March 24th and 25th in The Hague. Unfortunately, the current world leaders are not able to manage the Earth. They turned our planet into a big mess. The Earth is the victim of violence and industrial pollution. For example, radioactive waste in the Pacific Ocean.
Of all the mysteries in the world, I'll never understand Why do you want